Good evening, friends. Welcome back to Christian Parenting, Raising Your Kids for Heaven. Our topic this evening is stress and your child. The guests that are with us tonight, Gary Parker and his wife Donna. Welcome to the program. We're glad you're here. Donna, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you developed a love for working with children.
Well, by profession, I'm a nurse, but I've always enjoyed children. I was even asked to substitute at schools, sometimes teaching children, and found out I loved it. But then when my husband started working with children in his therapy, I went back and became certified working with them also.
Okay. What about you, Gary?
I was a minister for over 20-some years and being in evangelism. I worked with a great deal of the kids in the church as well as outside in the community. And then I went back to school and got my first master's in pastoral counseling. Then I turned around and got another master's in social agency counseling. And then I took a few more hours on top of that.
Now, you have a unique type of practice. You are one of 3 certified counselors in the state of Iowa.
That's true.
And you specialize in severely abused children.
These children are emotionally, behaviorally, been abused, been traumatized. And I'm one of 3 in the state of Iowa, which is horrible. More should be, because the kids are there.
Right. Well, let's get to our topic for this evening. We're talking about stress and peer pressure. Define for us what peer pressure is.
Peer pressure is where an individual or a group of individuals puts pressure on other children and have them mold to their thinking. That could be in what they eat, what they listen to, music, and they just try to control that other child.
85% of the children in schools today, especially in your middle schools, admit that they have done bullying. So it causes so much trauma to the children. It's one of the leading causes of death among the children, and they're committing suicide.
So you mean the leading cause of death as far as not so much the bullying, but what the bullying does to the child, which ultimately results in suicide?
Correct.
Last year, over 16,000 children committed suicide because of bullying.
Because of bullying that they face at school.
Yes, and this is from texting, people going on the internet, putting other kids' pictures and stuff on the internet, hitting them, a lot of different abuse.
So what are some of the risk factors that causes a child to give in to this type of pressure, this peer pressure that comes against them?
One of the things is low self-esteem, low self-image. They feel that they're helpless, hopeless, and worthy. Depression, where they need more self-esteem of who they are and what they are.
And that probably stems back to the home, the type of parents, the encouragement, the support that they have.
Yes.
Some of them come from such sad home lives that they want to belong to something. If the father and mother might be an alcoholic, father doing drugs, and they go to school and their friends become their family almost, so they want to fit in.
I have several clients to where mother was knocked out doing drugs or alcohol, and the children were parenting themselves. I had two boys. One was 14, one was 10, and then there was a little tiny girl at 3. Every morning they would go out and pick up cans and sell their cans so they could get donuts or pop. That was their breakfast every day, because mom was in the bedroom and out of it.
So family life has a big influence on whether or not a child's going to give in to this peer pressure.
A lot, a lot.
You teach your children at home self-respect, you teach them obedience, you give them boundaries. Even God gives us boundaries, and when a child feels secure, they don't give in to this pressure as easily. And then if you have time with your children, you talk about this with your children. Prepare them. You prepare for going out and playing ball, and when you send your children out among all these other children, They need to have this from their home, this security, this love and understanding. Family worship is a wonderful way to start the day and end it with your children. It gives you time to talk to them and know what's going on in their lives and pray for their problems with them. They feel secure and they're able to be leaders rather than followers.
So we want to make sure that the children are not suffering from low self-esteem. They feel valued, that they feel loved. What are some of the other risk factors that could affect children, make them vulnerable to bullying?
Another thing is their personal interests in life, you know, where they are, who they are, what they are. And they get that from their mom and dad. Spending time, I'm going to say a lot of that. Spend time with your children. How many of us, John, over the years, when our children are growing, we say one thing: I wish I would have spent more time with my children.
That's what the children remember.
That's what they remember. And they will tell you later on in life, why were you so busy? Why didn't you spend time with me? I came to you and asked you, and you said, no, I'm busy reading the paper. I'm busy doing some other thing. And they have to go off, and nobody answered that question for them.
Also, if a parent notices the gift that their child has, perhaps they're good in music, or they love to write or draw, get them involved into that.
There's an old saying, even a dog will wag its tail if you pet it. We need to be petting our children. We need to be touching our children and say, you know, I'm proud of you. The petting, the appreciation, the praise, we don't do it enough.
So these are big things that we as parents can do to help protect our children from giving in to this peer pressure. Now, of course, we want to try and eliminate as much of this as we can, but they're always going to face a certain degree of peer pressure, especially at school.
If they have questions, John, who do we want them to go to get the answers? We want them to come to us, and we need to be that close. We need to know how our kids are doing every day, what kind of day they've had, and stay in tune with our children.
What about knowing who your child's friends are? How much time they spend with their friends?
Very much, you know, and what kind of friends, what music they're listening to, what shows they're listening to, what Nintendos and video games are they watching at other people's homes or wherever. And you have to guard, you know, the old saying, thoughts and feelings combined make up the moral character. We almost have to talk to our kids, that would help, and ask them, you know, how do you feel? What did you think about that? And have them do some problem solving when they're at an age that they can.
So communicate regularly with your children.
You know, it's an interesting thing. The greatest need in the world today is just to have somebody listen to you. And the kids are the same way. In my marriage counseling, I find that that's the first question mom and dad ask. You know, well, he doesn't talk to me, she doesn't talk to me. The kids come in and say, Mom and Dad don't have time for us. And then they get into behavior, they get into wrong peer groups, they get into other things of the community that we don't want. And we need to know where they're at, what they're doing, and yes, what they're thinking.
Right.
A mother can have a great influence on her children, because if she would stop her work by 6 o'clock, she should be finished with her day's activities. I know she probably has another job, and she comes home and fixes supper. But try to make it fun after supper. If it doesn't have to be done and isn't going to matter in a few years, don't do it. Have fun with the children at night. Plan a picnic. Go out in nature. Maybe have a time where the children have a puppet show. Help them decorate for the puppet shows. Get excited in things, activities that you can do with your children. Make sure they get their homework done before supper, and after supper, Have a fun time. It'll keep your children off the street. Your husband will be excited to come home. What's you planned for tonight? And your sons will be anxious to be home. Your daughters will be anxious.
That's a great idea, Donna. I mean, I can imagine a child that's excited to go home because he likes spending time with his family. He's going to go home, but he's also going to, from time to time, invite a friend to come and enjoy what he has at home.
Yes, not only that, a parent that's fun to be around, a child is attracted to. It gives them this self-worth because they learn to do things and their friends are excited. Wow, your mom is helping you with this puppet show, and when Dad gets home, you're going to do this. Can we come? Can we be there? Can we do it?
Right. Great
Another
place.
thing is create memories, good memories with your kids. Because when they grow up, you're going to hear about it.
That's right. You
You know,
remember those
good and
memories.
bad memories. You want them to remember the good things. I have one lady that I always say that she's crazy because she'll come down to prepare breakfast and somebody didn't tell her about color code. She'll have red pants on. She'll have a pajama top on. She'll take mascara or a crayon and paint a beard or a mustache, or she'll paint rings around her eyes. And the family comes in for breakfast, and they look at Mom, and they say, "This is not my mom." And just memories, happy times, plan trips, plan things as a family, you know, and not Dad goes here, Mom goes here, and the kids wherever it goes. You know?
Build those family memories. Well, one of the things that we spoke about as being a stress for a child is peer pressure. What are some of the other major contributors to stress and children?
Moving. When a family moves, sometimes they move, especially ministers' children, they lose track of their friends. Their friends become their family because their extended family doesn't live close to them. And so when they move, they wonder, who am I? Where do I fit?
So just moving from one town to another, one state to another, that's a stress that comes to the child. What are some of the others?
Domestic violence in the home,
Sure.
yelling, screaming. You know, that frightens the child and make them fearful. And the first thought that comes to their mind is, Mom and Dad are going to get a divorce. And a lot of kids will even say, are you guys going to get a divorce? And it really bothers those
So
folks.
just arguing together.
Arguing.
That's creating stress.
And
the
the
child's
child-
listening.
The words that we use out of our mouth, sad to say, they only have 5% meaning. The tone that we say those words have more meaning, 37% meaning. And then the body language, my mom always put her hands on her hips, and she would just go that way and say no words. And us kids knew we better move, and we better move fast because we were in trouble. And all she did was the body language. So it's not what we're saying, it's how we're saying those words to our children, to each other. And, you know, our home should be a sweet home and a happy home because our kids are the imitators of Mom and Dad.
Now, I can imagine another major stress would be the death of a family member.
Yes.
Oftentimes, when there's a death, the families all gather together, Mom and Dad, aunts and uncles and grandma, and they're all in a huddled group supporting each other. And the child will stand back in the corner, and they're just watching all this. There's no one there for them. Oftentimes, we don't take the time to explain to these children, to hug these little ones, and say, you know, if you want to talk, I'll be here. They go through these losses, and they have to grieve the same as we do.
Okay. What about another?
Another one is money problems. It's a big one in the home. Mom and Dad are talking about they don't have enough money. There's more bills, and I don't know how we're going to pay this bill in front of the children. And they worry. They are stressed. They feel like they maybe are causing some of these bills by asking for a toy or asking them for a pair of jeans or shoes or whatever, and they will go and go and go to help mom and dad.
Even on the kids. We don't realize it, but it has an impact on the children. Divorce. How much stress does that place on children?
A lot, a lot. It depends on the age of the child, but at any age, children never, 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 never give up that mom and dad are going to get back together. That is their dream. And now society brought out about a year ago that even Barbie and Ken got a divorce in the doll world. Now, of course, that was all about money, because Barbie went off and got her prince, and Ken went off and got his girlfriend or whatever, you know. But even in the doll world, that stress of divorce and how that affects them is very stressful. They go to school, they can't concentrate, they have lower grades. Their whole thought is about mom and dad back there.
Mm-hmm. There was one little girl, and her mother and father were planning to get a divorce, and she was going to kill herself because she blamed herself for causing the divorce, even though she didn't. They need to be reassured it's not your fault.
You've probably found that several times before, where children blame themselves.
Yes.
If I could have done something different, mom and dad wouldn't have gotten a divorce.
Yes.
That's almost in every divorce. And it doesn't matter if it's teenagers or children. The little girl she was talking about is only 5 years old. I had to hospitalize her last year because she stole pills from her mom and dad. She had the plan, she had the method, and she was going to do it.
5 years old?
5 years old. That's tremendous stress and pressure on that child. All by hearing, because mom and dad were arguing and yelling, and they said, I need to get a divorce. And just that.
Well, you touched a little bit upon some of the effects of stress on children, but let's talk about that a little bit more. What are some of the key stress, or these different stresses, what effect do they have on the children?
Their grades will go down, their behavior will come up because of the anger and the stress that's in their life.
The medical things, of course, that interests me, because they can actually break out. Their skin can get little eruptions on it. They can have heart palpitations. They can have lack of coordination. You can notice an eating change, either not eating or overeating. They can have illnesses, sudden illnesses that they never had before.
You were telling me about one experience with somebody you had who was under, a young man who was under a lot of stress, who actually suffered a heart attack.
Yes. It was a young 14-year-old boy in Dayton, Ohio, that all he did was trotted out on the soccer field, had a heart attack, and died. And when they did some research and stuff, there was tremendous stress in the home with mom and dad yelling, screaming. There was alcohol, there was drugs involved. But more than that, they were trying to have this child be perfect in grades and everything, and they were yelling at the child a lot.
Now, probably stress affects people differently, affects children differently, probably affects different parts of the person's body, depending upon how they carry that stress.
Yeah. Wherever we carry our stress, there's where we're going to have our physical problems. And not only your kids, it's us too. If we carry it in our brain, we worry, think, we'll come down, and they will come down with migraine headaches or severe headaches. If they carry it on their chest and just listen to their words, they say, oh, I just can't breathe. It feels like a truck on my chest, and it's so heavy. They'll have heart palpitations. They will have chest pains. And most girls and moms, grown-up women, will carry their stress in their shoulders and in their stomach. And children, of course, will come down with a lot of stomach problems. You know, I've had even little children that have ulcers. Ulcers. And that's just way too much.
So we've spoken a little bit about some of the stress on children and the effects of stress. What are the signs then that your child is under excessive stress? What do we look for as parents?
Look for a cluster of symptoms. Poor in school, developing health problems, poor concentration, skin problems, chronic fatigue, anxiety, and poor behavior. They reclining back into their room, hibernating, giving away their clothes, giving away their toys, hurting other kids, taking that anger, that frustration out on other kids. Another thing is hurting themselves. I had one little boy that would literally jump off of things, fall, and said that he broke his leg, he broke his arm, and said, I have to go to the hospital. And they took him to the hospital, and you know, he just wanted mom and dad's attention, to listen to him.
In other words, we don't want to wait if our child's
Definitely
beginning
not.
to show some of these symptoms of stress. Will a child come to its parent and say, Mom and Dad, I'm just real stressed?
I doubt that. Usually they'll go to a teacher, they'll go to a friend, and sometimes that's a good friend, sometimes that's a bad friend. They will go to the school counselor. They will even go to the neighbor and tell them, but they probably won't tell mom and dad.
Now, some parents probably think, well, we have a wonderful home, you know, everything's going well. Our child shouldn't be under any stress. Is that true, just because you have a wonderful Christian home, that your child is not going to feel stressed?
There's so much stress. These children are doing 2 and 3 things at the same time. They can be watching television, talking to a friend on the phone,
Text messages.
and they can be trying to do homework all at the same time. These children are under so much stress today, and then they're expected to excel at everything.
That's right. The parents have these high standards. We were talking a little earlier, and I found something interesting. A growing problem with kids is this text messaging,
Right.
where they work on their phone. You've been working with some people who have just that problem.
Yes, I've had 2 or 3 moms say, my daughter is the fastest fingers in town, and she can text. And the problem is, it's very habitual. They cannot leave their phone at home, and during classwork and schoolwork, they're constantly texting, and they have their phone in bed with them at night. One client told me that his telephone bill was over $200 for his daughter.
Just with a text message.
For just text messages and stuff like that. But text messages is big, it's dangerous, and there is a website that any mom and dad can go to, and they can find help. And that's es-es.com.
es-es.com. Now, one of the big concerns, of course, as we look at stress and its influence on our children, when we begin to see our children expressing a lack of feeling, we need to get real concerned.
Very much so. Very much so. If they're hurting an animal, if you notice that there's no remorse, no feelings, no conscience, they just don't care. And that's a big time to really take note.
So let's say we discover some stress in our children. What do we do? I mean, we can't pull them out of school. Let's say they are being bullied at school. We can't pull them out of school. We can't quit our job and just stay home with the kids. What do we do? How do we try and help children cope with stress? Would it help talking to children about it?
They may
Very
need
much so.
therapy.
Okay,
Yes.
in some cases, they might need to go visit with someone.
Yes.
They might need
Counseling.
therapy.
And it's surprising. I've had 4 or 5-year-olds come in and just spill it all out and cry and tell me where their pain is on the inside, where their problems are, where they never talk to mom and dad. And, you know, it affects these children.
So having good communication with the child.
Very much so.
Sitting them down on the couch and just saying, how are you doing?
Yeah, don't
Talking
say,
to
do
them.
you have stress? You know, are you being bullied or stuff? But you can do that in several ways. Have your children draw pictures, any kind of pictures, and then have them explain those pictures to you and listen for the themes of their stories. You cannot not tell your story. even children. If you listen to them long enough, they'll tell you what's going on in their life.
So you can give a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old a piece of paper and say, draw me a picture.
Right.
And then tell me the story behind the picture.
Right.
You can
tell
learn
me
a lot.
about that picture.
Okay?
And they will tell you about that picture. Then listen for the themes of that story. And then just check it out, you know. While you're playing ball, throwing ball out in the yard, and spend time with your children. That's big.
That's the big one.
That's
Spending
the big
time.
one. And while you're playing with them, you know, said, you know, I noticed that you're kind of a little mopey, you know, in a fun way. And say, you know, I really care about you. I love you. And if you ever need somebody to talk to, please come and tell me.
Do you think sometimes children are afraid to tell their parents because they don't want to disappoint their parents?
Yes.
They don't want to give their parents the idea that, well, they don't have everything together.
Yeah, or
so
they're a failure.
they're a
no
failure?
good. They're worthless. The signs of depression is helpless, hopeless, and unworthy. And, you know, the kids want to mean something. They want to be something to mom and dad. They want mom and dad to be proud. They want mom and dad to praise them for itty-bitty time of growth.
We spoke about the importance of touch.
Yes.
How many times should a parent hug their child?
Well, most people say maybe 2 or 3 times a day, but what's across the entire United States, a child needs between 12 to 15 hugs a day. So the audience today can go home, the viewers today can go home, wake their kid up and say, I haven't gotten all the hugs in, and hug your kid. They're going to think you're probably crazy. But you know, it's interesting. I need to bring this in. Wives and husbands need at least 15 hugs a day.
15 hugs a day.
15 hugs. So when you go home, collect all those hugs.
All right, so physical touch, very important for
Very
children.
important. Holding your kids, wrestling with your kids. Be a camel or an elephant or what when they're small and they can ride on your back. Fun times, memory times, and then touch them and say, you know, I'm proud of you. You did so good at whatever it is.
When we come back, we're going to be talking about, well, some other areas that we need to be aware of, some experiences that our children might be going through. Thank you again for joining us. Friends, we will be back with the second part dealing with stress and your child.